Hi, I'm Rochester Chamber Communications Director Dan Smith, here with Michael Kracker, Executive Director of Unshackle Upstate. Rochester Chamber is a founding partner of Unshackle. For those not familiar with the organization, just give us a brief overview.
Absolutely. Unshackle Upstate is a upstate New York business and taxpayer advocacy coalition. We are Upstate's dedicated voice in Albany, fighting to make communities like Rochester and other cities throughout upstate New York and other communities a stronger place to live and a better place to do business. New York State's got a challenging business climate, but we want to make sure we're in the capital advocating for your members and businesses and taxpayers throughout the upstate region to improve the quality of life in our communities.
Now, the legislative session in Albany just started recently. Unshackle released its Advocacy Agenda, and we got a few bullet points on there. You want to run down them real quick?
Yeah,
All
absolutely.
right, let's start out with the rejection of an expanded prevailing wage mandate.
Absolutely. So this is, I think, an important issue for economic development in upstate New York. It's something that we've been proud to work with the Greater Rochester Chamber and our broader partners on, an effort to expand prevailing wage mandates onto private construction projects that receive some level of public inducement. There was a proposal last year that would apply these mandates to businesses or projects that receive a single dollar of public support. There were a few other proposals that came out in the legislative session last year, which we successfully defeated. We're going to be working, obviously, again in 2020. We've had some productive meetings with the governor's office, with the legislature, working in partnership with folks like the Greater Rochester Chamber to come up with a policy that's going to do the least to disrupt economic development efforts in cities like Rochester, where we're seeing things turn around in a significant way, due in large part to the leadership here in the community. But we want to make sure we protect that. We don't want to see new mandates imposed on construction that would unfortunately halt some of the positive momentum we've seen.
Returning to healthcare now, that's a big one for employers and business. Opposition to a single-payer healthcare system in New York.
Yes, you see it playing out at the national level, but there's a local version of this happening here in the state of New York. A policy known as the New York Health Act, which would require the elimination of private health insurance and force everybody onto a state-sponsored healthcare plan. We have concerns for a number of reasons. One, obviously there's a vibrant healthcare industry in upstate New York, places like Excellis, MVP, Independent Health that employ hundreds of thousands of people across the state. Those jobs would unfortunately be eliminated, and doing so would require billions of dollars of new taxes to fund what would be a state takeover of the healthcare space. So we are adamantly opposed to that effort. What we do believe is that we should be working towards a universal coverage model in the state of New York. Currently, less than 5% of the state's population is without insurance. In upstate, that number is closer to 3.5%. We need to work at the state level to address that coverage gap and make sure that those individuals have access to affordable, quality health care. Eliminating the private health insurance market does not need to be part of that equation. We can do it more affordably and without as much disruption to a significant swath of the economy if we work together to come up with a solution to address that small piece.
Now, this next one, Unshackle Upstate Advocacy Agenda, plays out on a number of levels. It's sort of anywhere you go in New York, blocking new mandates on employers. There could be any number of mandates there.
Any business in New York State will tell you it's not just our tax climate that's a challenge, it's the regulatory and mandate culture that comes out of Albany that, however well-intended those mandates may be, none of them exist in a vacuum. They add up on top of each other for employers, and it seems every year there's a new mandate that adds to that burden. This year in the executive budget, a paid sick leave proposal was put forward. Obviously something we are concerned about how that might impact employers, and are going to work with the administration and the legislature to see how that debate gets shaped and make sure whatever the policy is least onerous as possible on our New York employers, while perhaps still achieving the objective that they're seeking out. So anytime you have a new mandate, particularly for our small businesses in New York, it becomes a challenge. So we want to make sure that Albany maybe slows down and considers the unintended effects of these mandates before they rush to pass them through the legislature.
Now, this next one's an important part for Rochester Chamber in 2020. The ROC 2025 initiative just was unleashed upon the Finger Lakes region. Rochester Chamber is responsible for the workforce and talent development piece of that. Unshackle Upstate for Cross Upstate, investing in workforce
Absolutely.
development.
I travel around upstate New York all the time, meeting with businesses and chamber organizations, and the number one thing I hear is the big challenge is access to talented workforce. We've got low unemployment in the state of New York. You've had out-migration challenges that have made it very difficult for businesses who want to grow to find the necessary labor to do so. So I think it's a win-win for the state to want to work with the employer community to address any skills gap we have. I think at Unshackle Upstate, we believe that the best model is employer-led workforce development, so we're thrilled with everything the Rochester Chamber is doing. You are the eyes and ears of the business community here in the Finger Lakes. You know the challenges that your employers have, what skills they need, and we believe that you are well equipped to work with the state of New York to craft workforce development that makes sense for the Finger Lakes. And that might be different than the Southern Tier or New York City or the North Country. So working with a regional employer-led organization like the Greater Rochester Chamber, for us, makes all the sense in the world.
I did want to get into that. Unshackle has several partners.
Absolutely.
And you have to work differently within each region of the upstate economies. Tell me about that.
Yeah, no question. Our leadership team consists of chambers and trade groups from Buffalo, Rochester, Binghamton, Plattsburgh, Syracuse. So we cover a wide range of upstate New York territories. Some of the challenges are the same. Some of the concerns you hear from particular areas are different. One issue that's come up this year is a provision about perhaps expanding Buy American proposals, which at the surface level sounds great, but for a lot of regions of the state, the cross-border economy is key. And the relationship that we have with our friends to the north in Canada, in an area like Plattsburgh and Buffalo, and even here in Rochester, is significant, and we want to make sure that we protect that particular relationship, which is unique to some areas of the state. I don't think you see as much cross-border trade in the tip of Long Island as you do at Niagara Falls. So it's something that's unique depending on what area of the state I'm in, but it's no doubt an important upstate issue.
Another piece of the Unshackle Upstate's legislative agenda, strengthening Upstate's voice in Albany. And that starts with Unshackle, but it also goes out to every business owner out there.
No question. We all know that New York City is the population center of the state of New York, but it's a big state, 62 counties, largely, most of those are upstate New York. We want to make sure that we have an important seat at the table. And all of our legislative leaders and the governor, they are from Westchester on south, but that doesn't mean that the issues north of the Tappan Zee Bridge aren't as important as those in the 5 boroughs. And we're working within the legislature to bring that voice to the table. Bob Duffy's talked in the past about perhaps an upstate caucus or something similar to that would make sure that not on every issue are we going to find agreement, but on the important issues that matter specifically at upstate, infrastructure, and making sure that we get our share of economic development investment, that we have a block that's working together to advocate for a pro-upstate agenda. That's obviously core to our mission. I think it's one that the Rochester Chamber has done a great job of amplifying not just Finger Lakes issues, but upstate issues. And I think we need to do more of that to make sure that there's balance in Albany as to what areas of the state are getting focused.
And Michael, I want to thank you for being with us
Absolutely.
today. If you'd like more information on Unshackle Upstate and get in contact with Michael Kracker, you can go to unshackleupstate.com.